AI versus insurance. Reversing every denial. You just got denied. Again. The letter came on a Tuesday. Blue envelope, insurance company logo centered perfectly. And your claim for that surgery, that medication, that test your doctor ordered is now marked not medically necessary. You read it 3 times. Your doctor didn't write medically necessary on the order. He wrote the diagnosis. He wrote the code. He wrote why you need it. So why does a stranger in an office 2,000 miles away get to rewrite his clinical judgment? Here's what you don't know yet. That denial letter isn't final. And the person who sent it is gambling that you won't know the law they just violated. Insurance denials operate on a psychological premise that you'll accept them because they sound official. The letter uses medical language. It cites policy numbers. It sounds like it went through a process. But there's a mechanism hidden inside that denial that most people never see. And once you understand how it works, you can weaponize it against them. Not metaphorically, legally. When an insurance company denies your claim, federal law, specifically the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA, and state insurance codes, requires them to issue what's called an explanation of benefits. That document has to contain specific, detailed reasons for the denial. Not vague ones, not doesn't meet guidelines. Specific clinical or contractual reasons tied to your actual policy language and your actual medical record. Most denials don't do this. Most denials are template responses. And that's where they made their first mistake. Now here's where billingdefender.com changes the game entirely. An appeal used to require hiring a medical billing advocate or attorney. You'd pay 25 to 40% of whatever you recovered. The process took months. You'd compile records, operative reports, lab results, physician notes, and you'd pray the appeal reviewer would actually read them. Most didn't. They'd skim. They'd look for one phrase that justified the original denial and rubber stamp it again. Average appeal success rate? Around 30%, which means 70% of legitimate claims stayed denied because the appeal itself was weak, disorganized, or didn't speak the language the reviewer wanted to hear. Then AI platforms like billingdefender.com entered the space and inverted the entire economics of the process. The technology works like this. You upload your denial letter and medical records, the same documents you already have. The AI system reads the denial and cross-references it against your policy documents and your clinical information. It identifies the specific gap between what the insurance company claimed and what your records actually support. Then it generates a legal appeal letter that doesn't just argue, it cites. It pulls exact policy language. It pulls clinical evidence from your own medical record. It structures the argument in the precise format that state insurance departments and appeal reviewers are trained to recognize as legitimate. What changes is the density of the response. A human-written appeal might be 5 pages. An AI-generated appeal might also be 5 pages, but every sentence carries weight. Every claim is sourced. Every rebuttal is preemptive. The insurance company's denial letter said, "Doesn't meet medical necessity guidelines." The AI response doesn't just say, "Yes, it does." It says, "The denial cites guideline X, but your policy on page 47 explicitly carves out exceptions for condition Y, which the patient has." The operative report dated date documents, specific clinical finding. Therefore, the denial misapplies its own guidelines to your case. That's not opinion. That's a legal argument. And here's the thing insurance companies know but hope you don't. They're legally prohibited from ignoring a well-structured appeal. It's not a suggestion. If an appeal meets certain structural and legal standards, the insurance company has to assign it to a different reviewer. They can't just pass it to the same person who made the original decision. That's the law. But there's a catch built into this system, and it's important you see it clearly. Insurance companies also know this law. So when they get an appeal that's clearly structured, clearly sourced, and clearly legal, they sometimes approve it immediately. Not because they suddenly believe the claim is valid, but because defending a bad denial in court costs more than paying it. A claim for $8,000 in surgical costs? The legal fees to defend a bad denial can run $15,000 to $25,000, so the math flips. They approve. But other times, they don't. Sometimes the appeal hits a second wall. a pre-authorization requirement they claim wasn't met, or a contractual exclusion you didn't know existed. The appeal succeeds in one dimension and loses in another. You've won the battle of, is this medically necessary, but lost the battle of, does this fall under your coverage at all? And now you're back where you started, except you've spent months on it, and the appeal deadline is approaching. This is where the technology reveals its actual function. AI isn't magic. It doesn't make invalid claims valid. What it does is illuminate the precise mechanism by which your claim was denied. It shows you whether the denial was procedurally illegal, the insurance company violated the law in how it processed your claim, or substantively weak, the claim itself might not be covered, or both. Once you know that, you can make a decision, appeal again with different evidence, request an external independent review, escalate to your state's insurance commissioner, or settle. Most people never get to make that decision because they never understand what actually happened to their claim. The statistics on this are worth knowing. Claims appealed with structured legal language are overturned at a rate between 60 and 75%, depending on the claim type. That's double to 2.5 times the rate of unstructured appeals. The difference isn't that the second group had weaker claims, it's that the presentation itself changes how reviewers process the information. Humans aren't neutral. We respond to structure. We respond to citation. We respond to the appearance of authority. But here's the deeper truth that lives underneath this technology. The system is built on the assumption that you'll give up. Insurance companies price their denials on the statistical likelihood that you won't appeal, or that your appeal will be weak enough that it'll lose. It's a volume game. Deny 100 claims. Get 70 accepted immediately because people don't fight. Of the remaining 30 that are appealed, maybe 20 lose because the appeal is unstructured. You've kept 90 claims denied. That's your profit margin. That's your system. Now introduce AI appeals into that math. Suddenly 60 to 75% of appealed claims succeed. Your margin collapses. So the industry does what industries always do. They fight back. They argue that AI-generated appeals lack the human understanding of medicine. They lobby regulators to require human signatures. They make the process slower, more expensive, and more legalistic. And they might win some of those arguments, but the trap is already set. You now know that your denial wasn't inevitable. It was a choice. Someone, somewhere, chose to deny your claim. Not because it was invalid, but because they calculated you wouldn't fight back hard enough. And once you know a system is built on that bet, it's very hard to unsee. The question isn't whether the appeal will work. The question is whether you'll make them prove that the denial was right. BillingDefender.com